Mark, I don't want to get you in trouble, but I'm just so interested.
Oh, hey, would you stop?
No. I don't want to get you in trouble.
You know how we started the last podcast, Joe? By actually saying the podcast the prosecutors don't want you to listen to. Dum, 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 dum.
Welcome to 2.5 Angry Men. I'm Harvey Levin.
You know, I'm Mark Geragos, and I don't know if you're referring to me as the half because I've been immobilized, but clearly,
I am.
For today, I'm going to call it 3 Angry Men because we've got Joe, who Harvey has told me I can't even talk about.
No, of course you can talk about it.
Savagely, because I've been sidelined, how savagely he took down Nancy Grace.
Okay, we'll get into this. Joe Tacopina, welcome to our podcast.
Hey, I'm honored to be part of the 2 Angry Guys.
We love it.
Whatever. So I'm part of the group now, huh?
Okay, yeah. guys. We
jumped you in, Joe.
We got to start with this. So just a little while ago, Donald Trump came out and said that depending on the circumstances, he might pardon Diddy. And here's what he said. He said they used to be really good friends. And the way Trump put it was, Diddy used to really like me a lot. But then when I ran for office, he took some shots at me and then said that he hasn't been asked formally, but it sounds like he said people were sniffing around about possibly doing this. And then in the end, he said, if I determine that somebody has been mistreated by the government, I would absolutely consider a pardon. So, Mark, you were right in the middle of the Hunter Biden pardon. I know this, and you knew about it long before it broke. Is my recon. So you know something about this or not? You are, in some way associated with the lawyers, and one of whom is your daughter on the Diddy side. Has there been an overture? Because now that I start thinking about it, with the Chrisleys and all these other people, this is not the craziest thing, even though it seems pretty crazy. Has there been any outreach?
Joe, I've got a question for you. Suck me into a 23.1 here. I have a question, Joe. I don't understand. You practice in New York, famously practice in New York, and condolences. I think Bernie Kerik died today, and I think you were very close to him, at least at one point. I haven't talked to you about it. If you were, and I think you were, I have my condolences. I don't understand, and Harvey and I talked about this for 2 podcasts, and he slammed me the first time, and then the listeners slammed him, so I already did the reason, my kind of analysis as to why it's unconstitutional. What is perplexing to me is it was re-upped, meaning they once again had this local rule 23.1, and one of the comments was the dearth or some language like that about any case decisions, meaning nobody has challenged this. Why has nobody challenged 23.1 in New York? You guys aren't shrinking violence. I don't understand.
I'm going to object. I asked a question, and you just simply ignored my question.
You went so far off your question, Harvey. I don't even remember what your question was.
Okay, so hold on. So then I'll address.
Good job, Mark.
I'm sorry, Mark, but you can't. You're just ignoring me.
We'll come around to you first.
No. Let's. Joe, can you answer my question? Do you think? Because here's what I'm thinking: that he has as much as said Diddy started taking shots at me when I started running for office, and he used to like me a lot. And the way things are feeling with the backdrop, if Diddy starts to like him again a lot, that this could be his safety net. Am I crazy here?
You're not crazy. I mean, look, it's clear from the president's words, and I know how he speaks, I decipher the code. No one has approached him. But he knows that people are thinking about approaching him, and they're thinking about saying something, and they're close to saying something, but no one has. So that's I think a message is basically saying, if you get back in line, and if you do what you used to do, which is adore me, we'll consider it. Whatever. He's got to have people around him that are going to look. Ultimately, the one thing about President Trump, he makes the final call no matter what. His advisors are just that, advisors. They're not people who make ultimate decisions, but people will advise him on that. It wouldn't be a popular case if a jury convicts here to do that. But here's the thing: if I'm Diddy and I'm Diddy's lawyers, and Tenney and Mark Ignifilo and the crew, this is the last thing I want to hear. This is the last thing I want out before, in the press with the jury, because God forbid a jury is like, oh, so even if we convict him, he's going to get off anyway. Oh, all right. Well, then it's not that big of a deal. He's not going to spend life in prison. He's going to get a pardon, but we're going to convict him anyway because he's proven to be a bad guy. He's proven to be unlikable. He's proven to have done some horrific things. If at the end of the day, he's not going to spend life in jail anyway because, he's going to get pardoned by the president, the standard is a little bit lower. That's the last thing if I were his lawyer, I would be horrified with that story getting any legs, and hopefully I'd kneecap it right away.
That is so interesting because if there are Trump supporters and he makes an insinuation even that the government has overreached, say, in racketeering, they might buy into it just because they're Trump supporters.
But it is his government now, right? It's his Justice Department. So it's his prosecutors who are prosecuting this one now. No, they did not initiate this case, but in other cases that they did not initiate, like the Eric Adams prosecution, when his DOJ came in, they kneecapped that one. They had it dismissed. This one, Jay Clayton and that the prosecutors from that district went forward. So that's his DOJ. They had to at least approve the trial, I would assume. I don't think Pam Bondi just let this happen without knowing. So I think it's just President Trump doing what he does often, which is just speak off the cuff. It works well for him. But I think that's all that was. I don't think there's really too much to it. I'm pretty sure no one has approached him.
Yet you said they're close to it. I heard you say that, and Trump insinuated that too. Yes, you did, or a little bit.
No, I said that's what he was saying. They're close to it.
What does that mean?
But they're close to it. I don't know if they're close to it, Harvey. I really don't. I wouldn't. I have no information. There's a guy on the right that might be able to help us, but he can't help us.
That's what I'm thinking. Hey,
You'll
Mark.
get in trouble.
Mark, Mark. This is a political and not a legal issue.
So can we go back to 23.1 for a second? Why is it in New York? Nobody. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to get me into talking about
politics.
It's crazy.
I could say quite a bit about this for a variety of reasons, but I'm going to just, in deference to his honor, in deference to my firstborn, who I love dearly, I'm going to return to asking Joe what he thinks about 23.1 and why it hasn't been challenged.
I don't know. It should be challenged. There's no practical basis for it, and here especially. So I don't know the answer to that, Mark. I really don't, and it should be challenged. But it's crazy. But you're doing the right thing, obviously, because you want to make sure that you don't ruffle any feathers. And your daughter, by the way, your daughter's a terrific lawyer. Tenny is. I'm very impressed. There's people who are children of great lawyers who become lawyers, and it's not the same.
Boy, you and I know exactly. I'm sure we're reading each other's minds right now, but I that's why I take that as high praise for her. So I appreciate.
No, she is. She's something else. I'm very impressed with her. That opening was phenomenal. And that's my opening summations and crosses my daily bread. It's what I love and it's what I study and what I really I think I perfected it. And that was as good as I've seen. So I think she's.
What am I missing? What am I missing here? You're complaining that nobody's challenged it. You could challenge it. Why don't you challenge it?
If Tenny was not involved, I would, and I would do it.
He's right, Harvey. He's right, Harvey. He's right. I mean,
I'm not going to do it with my daughter in the headlights. I mean, it just wouldn't. I mean, it's already. I've already quipped sometimes when I wish I had taken it back. But Joe, I have another question for you along those lines. Harvey's not going to jump into the middle of this again and try and shut me down when I ask the question. Haven't you always thought that, and I've made this argument, I want to hear if you think I'm on the line, that I always talk about the genesis of these, I don't, 23.1 isn't necessarily a gag order, but it's this idea in
Which
recent
are unconstitutional, by the way.
Right, exactly. And in recent years, it's always of the defense. But the genesis is Shepard versus Maxwell, which F. Lee Bailey made his bones on, which was to reverse a conviction to protect a defendant's right to a fair trial. Where in the world did this get turned upside down that now the prosecutors, who, by the way, have enough handmaidens out in the media cheerleading for them. Speaking of which, Nancy Grace and you yesterday, which, by the way, do you have that clip? You got to play the clip, Harvey. You cannot let our listeners
go to Tubi. You can watch it for free. It's called The United States versus Sean Combs Inside the Diddy Trial. And it is
okay. So I watched, and Nancy was going wild about, what was she saying, Joe, about your eyes?
I mean, aside from screaming at me to the point where I couldn't even understand what she was screaming, I did finally hear her say, "What are you going to start with those wild eyes again?" Because I was like, exactly, I was really being animated and like, Nancy, you don't know the law. You don't know the law. She, oh, there you go with those wild eyes again. And I took the bait.
Oh, you like that. Like that.
And no, don't step on the punchline. And you said,
I don't recall.
He said, "At least my eyes move."
He did say that. He did say that. Hey, Joe.
But by the way, that's not Joe's best. That's not Joe's best.
It was a good line. It was a good line.
Joe's best line is on camera in Aesop Rocky in the criminal courts building when Lewin said something. He said, "Oh, you're going to go get reversed again in the Ninth Circuit."
For lying to a jury.
Yeah, he says, "Stop with the steroids." And Joe, without missing a beat, says, "Well, hey, hunchback."
I said, John, it's not steroids. It's just eating well. I work out very hard. I eat well. You should try once in a while. Grab a salad instead of a donut, you fat fuck, and you won't have that big hangover belly and the hunchback. And that happened to all take place on camera, by the way. But he started.
Oh, my God.
I don't start, but I do finish.
Hey, Joe, it seems like the prosecution made some headway this week on racketeering, that you look at Diddy and you start hearing about arson and kidnapping, especially from Capricorn Clark, where she is talking about, threatened to end up in the East River, that Diddy goes wild when he finds out that she used to work with Suge Knight, takes her to a vacant building for 5 days, gives her a lie detector, with all of his associates. It's feeling racketeering-y to me.
It's feeling Diddy to me. Look, a racketeering enterprise is a racketeering enterprise. It's not a lunatic who is a jealous boyfriend, a control freak, not a nice guy, a domestic batterer, someone who acts like a piece of garbage to his employees. That's not what a racketeer is. That doesn't make it a racketeering act, Harvey. I don't see that as an act in furtherance of a racketeering scheme. This has a racketeering enterprise, which is traditionally, understand, it's for a criminal organization, right? So an enterprise that's established to commit crimes. Bad Boy Records in no way, shape, or form was established for that purpose. It doesn't turn into a criminal enterprise because one person in that organization commits some crimes. So I still think there's a big gap here where, look, bad guy, proven, criminal, proven, domestic batterer, proven, drug abuser, proven, all those things they've proven. We're in federal court though, okay? And we have a racketeering sex trafficking trial. And I think there's a big void in the evidence. That's why we keep seeing that Cassie video over and over and over again. It's not evidence of racketeering. It's not evidence of anything but a domestic assault, which it is. It's a disgusting video. But again, I know if Nancy here, she'd be screaming at me and saying, "Oh, it's racketeering," or Ashley Banfield
holding up a Tootsie Roll.
Tootsie Roll, whatever that meant. And Ashley Banfield saying, what a racketeering act is, even though there's no enterprise. Like, you really have to understand the law before you can opine on this stuff.
So let me ask you something about that. I get the mafia, has kind of a below.
It's not just the mafia.
No,
I
I know. But it's you could have a front organization that seems legit, but underneath it, they're running a drug ring, they're running a hitman ring, they're running something that's a criminal organization. But at a point, could a jury say, look, it's not a specific crime organization, to sell drugs or guns or hit people or do hits on people, but he is using Bad Boy and all of the people under him in Bad Boy to commit crimes, that Bad Boy is being used for Diddy to always get his way no matter what it takes. If they look at Bad Boy that way, if they look at it like it is just a tool of Diddy's to get what he wants at all costs and violate the law, why can't that be considered under a racketeering umbrella?
Because he's not using Bad Boy as a tool. He's using himself. He's using his own actions. It's not. He doesn't need Bad Boy.
His people in Bad Boy.
But those are his minions, right? They're all minions who work for him. Go get me my drugs. Go tell this person that. Go do this. Go do that. That doesn't make them part of a racketeering enterprise. And it's not Bad Boy. It's not like Bad Boy is doing something. The organization, like there's a hierarchy. There's no hierarchy there. It's not like Diddy, his underboss, the capos, the soldier. It's just Diddy and a bunch of people who work with him or want to be around him, or his assistants, or his girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, half girlfriends, whatever. It just, Harvey, I'm telling you, it doesn't feel like a racketeering enterprise to me. And if I'm the defense in this case, when I'm summing up here, aside from the issues of consent, okay, because I know you're not, God forbid, you can't question the accuser, or you're victimizing the victim again, even though they've not been proven to be a victim. The issues that we've talked about with Cassie, right, regarding not reporting to the police, going to a money lawyer, trying to get money for a manuscript of a book, getting $20 million, having text messages that are completely inconsistent with her untrial testimony, that were contemporaneous to these acts, setting up these freak-offs on her own volition without even being asked to do it. All those different things. Of course, the horrific allegation of rape, which is a horrific allegation, but then after being raped by someone, coming back to them and having a consensual sexual relationship with them after they rape you, when you're in another relationship with your now husband, and saying that was one of the best nights of my life. I'm sorry. It could all be true, but you're allowed to question that. And if you don't do it, you lose your law license as a defense attorney.
But you're not questioning the concept of a Stockholm syndrome, are you?
I am not. But you see, here's the thing. It's great because if she had done all those things, if she had gone to the police, they'd be like, wow, she went to the police right away, outcry witness. Wow, it's amazing. If she had no text messages that were inconsistent with her on-trial testimony, they'd say, look, these are all prior consistent statements. She's been consistent since day one. If she had been raped and then after the rape sent him a message saying, I can't believe you raped me, and never saw him again, those would be bastions of prosecutorial argument that they would be hammering. The fact that it's the opposite of that, now there's an excuse. It's Stockholm syndrome. I mean, so you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So you can never be falsely.
Which, by the way, is whenever you have expert testimony in cases where they're trying to bolster the fact that you don't have the evidence, that the litany of evidence you would normally want, those experts, if you push them on cross-examination, the expert literally can take any reaction and say it's consistent with.
Of course.
And then what have you got? How is that an expert that any reaction means that's consistent with what we're alleging? That's not an expert. That's somebody who's just repeating whatever you want under the guise of expertise.
Without having done any clinical analysis in this case, by the way. So all that stuff was theoretical.
I was talking 30,000 foot view, not on this case.
Listen, Harvey. Here's the one thing. We have a New York jury here, and we should not forget that. A New York jury. From what I understand, this is a New York jury. And a New York jury, we're a little different. We're a little more tough. We're a little more gritty. We're not so quick to accept every excuse in the book for everything. I know we had our show yesterday, and one of our guests was saying she was crying as she was, she made it sound like she was listening to the testimony in court. She was reading a reporter's rendition of the testimony and said she was crying reading the reporter's rendition of the testimony. I think that's a little much. You lose the emotional I think, impact there when you're reading a
I don't know
report.
who that was. Was that a New Yorker who said that? Because I can't believe that.
She is a New Yorker, but wait.
No, she's a Canadian. She's a Canadian.
Well, okay, but she lives
But
in New
anyway,
York. She's lived in New
but
York.
she lives in New York. Okay, well, that's she's Canadian. So, but the point is, the jurors, according to Brian, according to the TMZ reporter on site, the jurors are deadpan. They're not reacting to anything. I mean, for the most part, and please don't pretend to know what they're thinking. They could be, we hate this guy, but they could also be like, yeah, we think all these women are in it for a payday. It's funny, they all wanted to be around this guy. They couldn't get close enough to him.
Yet all the women that have taken the stand so far have talked about abuse and pressure and threats and violence. So there is that, when you kind of look at the mosaic, the way it's being constructed, this, in a way, the whole notion of was Cassie really consenting or not gets bolstered. The prosecution's view of it gets bolstered by these other women who have taken the stand and men.
If you buy it, if you buy the pressure, I was there because of pressure. Look, he was not a nice guy to them, clearly. And I think he was at a stage in his life, and I spoke to him. I think he was at a stage in his life where he was a different human being than he is today. He was under some serious addictions, and he was you could see he was just an evil person. That's not necessarily who he is today. It doesn't matter. He's not on trial for who he is today. He's on trial for the acts he committed back then. But so was not a nice person. I understand that. But pressure, people kept coming back for more. This as recently as this assistant, the whatever name is the last one, Cassandra. So it's
Capricorn Clark.
Capricorn. I mean, aside from her dismantling the credibility of Cassie, again, another witness, that government witness who put a little more of a lie to Cassie's testimony, all the horrible things that happened to her that caused her to emote in court and have tears. When Diddy was charged here, she reached out to him and said, "You should have kept me. Could I have my job back? I want to work for you." I went, "What?" I mean, this is the woman who's so traumatized by him, and she wasn't pressured to call him. She reached out to him to say, "I want my job back." So just common sense. I wouldn't have done that. I don't think my friends and family would have done that. Maybe some people would do that, but not people I know wouldn't do that. So I think that's fair game.
Mark, are you allowed to ask questions?
Joe, I'm fascinated by, because you're coming right off of a spectacular win in LA and having an LA jury that did the right thing in that case. Talk a little bit about the difference between a New York jury and an LA jury, because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, New York jury is no nonsense. I mean, believe me, I was worried about the LA jury thing. And I spoke to the LA jury about the LA jury thing in jury selection. I was like, you guys, I'm from New York. We're a little different. You guys good with that. We did give you the Brooklyn Dodgers. Remember that. I made sure they understood that. And so, but it's a different mindset. There's a different, New Yorkers are grit. We are a little more aggressive in general, I think, as a stereotype, but we have a jury and that represents the community. My experience, and I've tried over 100 jury trials in this state, I just think that they are a little more skeptical to believe excuse after excuse after excuse. I think they're a little more harsh when they come to evaluate the credibility. Look, I had a case called the Rape Cops case. It was one of the most famous cases in New York for a long time. I mean, it was a horrific case where 2 cops were charged with raping a drunken woman. These guys were called rape cops before trial for 2 years. Not alleged rape cops, rape cops. There was a woman who was an executive at a marketing industry, a company, very articulate, not like a person with a bad background or anything like that. But we got an acquittal in that case, okay? And people thought we had no chance, especially because my client happened to be on tape, allegedly confessing to the rape. But we got an acquittal. And we got an acquittal because I picked a jury of true New Yorkers, some smart people, but also true New Yorkers who are going to be a little skeptical of stories that just don't sort of ring the common sense bell. That's all. And so, I believe in the jury system. We don't always get it right, but we get it right more times than not. That's for sure. And New York's not an easy place. to come in with excuses. It's just not. I mean, New York jurors are skeptical, and I find women are harsher critics of women complainants in sexual assault cases. I think they're harsher critics.
I was telling Harvey the same thing. It's amazing to me, all the women. I mean, at one time in my career, I must have had 5 separate women accused of, and I went to trial, and I think 3 of the 5 for murder. And I learned from the first case, women are hardest on women in criminal trials. It's wild to me.
Hey, Mark, I don't want to get you in trouble, but I'm just so interested.
Oh, would you stop?
Well, no. I don't want to get you in trouble.
You know how he started the last podcast, Joe? He started the last podcast by actually saying, the podcast the prosecutors don't want you to listen to. Dum, 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 dum. And he did the sound effects.
I did. Look, I'm so interested in this Trump thing. Joe made it very clear that Trump is a very transactional guy, which everybody knows, and he rewards his friends, and everybody knows that. And you look at the Chrisleys, who just got pardoned, and what their daughter did, I think, made the difference. Not even so much what Todd and his wife did, but what the daughter did by speaking at the convention, by supporting Trump, by doing all the things she did. I think they got pardoned because of it. So if that's true, Diddy is not going to make statements saying how much he loves Trump's position on tariffs. But is it possible his kids are going to look at this and say, maybe we'll do something. Maybe we'll take the same kind of stand that the Chrisley's daughter took because it seemed to work for them. So is that a crazy thought?
No, but let me make a couple of points. I've had numerous clients who have been pardoned federally. As you mentioned, I had Hunter. I had I mentioned also, I had Susan McDougal, who was Bill Clinton's erstwhile business partner during Whitewater. The presidential pardon power, other than an acquittal, is the only other unappealable action in the world of criminal. So they can use it, and it's been tested, and it's absolute. So one of the things, the law of unintended consequences, when you start getting into lawfare, like the Democrats did, and that's really what offended me the most about my lifelong party, was when we started going after Trump. One of the things you do is you heighten. So the old joke used to be, I'm old enough to remember when they said a Democrat is a Republican who's been indicted. I mean, that's talk about how ridiculous that statement is nowadays. But when you perp walk him through the Georgia state courts to get his mugshot, and when you have him kind of paraded through the state court here, and then you indict him in 2 other courts federally, you have a president now who is very attuned to the criminal justice system. Once you've been accused, you don't come back from that unscathed. Joe will tell you, how many clients have you had, Joe, who in the middle of a trial or after the trial, even when they're acquitted, turn to you and say, how the hell do you do this for a living? It is the worst thing, right?
Especially when those clients are law and order people who think that everyone accused is guilty, right? Exactly. Until it's them. And, that's why I say to them, that's why it's important to do what we do. It really is, Harvey. I mean, we're no good for the Nancy Grace of the world, but without us, the system collapses and breaks.
I agree.
And to me, it's a badge of honor and integrity for a criminal defense lawyer to represent the least popular, the most despised individual in this country. It really is, because it takes courage, it takes integrity, and it takes real chutzpah, so to speak, to do that, because it's important, but it keeps the system honest. Look, every time people talk to me about how can you represent someone like that, I cite Richard Jewell. That's just one of hundreds of examples. Yeah. But Richard Jewell's a great one, because that guy was so presumed guilty it wasn't even funny.
Well, that was the media's fault.
Okay, but it was the media's fault, but also the FBI's fault.
But by the way, Lynn Wood who's had his own issues in the last couple of years, but back then was a close friend. I would count him as a close friend. Lynn stepped up. That he was not. He was just pilloried for taking that case. Absolutely pilloried. So
amazing, right? And he was called the Uniblubber. They were making fun of his weight. This guy was actually a sweet human being who actually tried to be a hero, and for that he got this, and that ultimately killed.
Well,
him.
the people who represented the lawyers who represented Harvey Weinstein, same thing, is that the public doesn't really want justice. They want what they want. And if that happens to be justice, great. But they make they set their opinions up and say, if you are not aligned with it, screw you. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think the majority of Americans aren't really that interested in democracy. I think when it suits them, it's great. And when it doesn't, they don't say I'm against democracy. They just say, I don't give a shit about your rights. You offend me, and you're not going to do what you're entitled to do. I mean, I hate to say that, but I believe that.
Harvey, I think you're right.
Yeah, but to Joe's point, I can't tell you the number of times, Joe, I'll bet you it's happened to you 100 times, if not 1,000, that clients will come into your office and their loved one is either in custody or had just been about to be arrested. And they'll say, but what about my rights? And what about this? And what about that? And I'll say, I'll bet you're normally the person who is saying, lock them all up and throw away the key, or how do you sleep at night when you defend this person, blah, 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 until you have been in the crosshairs. Once you're in the crosshairs, it is a complete reset. And I think that's what's happened with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been in the crosshairs, in my opinion, unfairly so, time after time. Thank God he had somebody like Joe. Thank God he had somebody like Todd Blanche and Emil Bove and people. And then down in Georgia, he had some very able lawyers. But, once you've gone through it, it does reset your brain. You're not buying what the government is, the horse shit the government is selling you.
And I get it. And look, I mean, the fact that the first thing the prosecutors did in the Diddy case was hold a news conference. Says something. And look, we've seen plenty of U.S. attorneys make a career off of, in the Martha Stewart case with James Comey, by the way, with Rudy Giuliani. So there is a rich history in New York with U.S. attorneys. So I get it. What I'm wondering, and I Mark, I hope you can weigh in on this, but I got to say, if I were his lawyer right now, Diddy's lawyer, because I think, forgetting about racketeering, just the interstate transportation of sex workers, he's got a huge problem with that one. So given what's going on, whatever his children do now is going to get huge attention. If he gets convicted, the attention span of the public is like a nanosecond. They're going to be on to something else, and they're not going to get the attention. So if I were his lawyer and the kids came to me and said, should we do something pro-Trump? I'd probably say yeah, because the guy is so transactional. And what you said, which is he has such a distrust of the justice system, in New York especially, that maybe it would work.
Maybe. I mean, it's, first of all, this is federal, it's not state. So whether it's New York or Arkansas, it's the United States government prosecuting this case, not the state of New York. And you have to sort of be careful, Harvey, also, because to jump in now in the middle of his trial and start wearing like MAGA hats to the trial, I think it looks a little transparent. Right? I don't think Justin should be coming to court with like a MAGA hat on.
I was not saying that.
So I don't know what they really can do now. I think they have to let this process ride. And I don't want, if I'm his lawyer, again, I'm having a stroke right now, hearing us even have a conversation about Trump possibly pardoning him. So that's the last thing in the world I want to happen. So I hope to God this dies on the vine, because this wasn't something that was generated by the defense. It wasn't something that like Diddy's people like came up with. It was something that just happened. Some reporter at a press conference for Elon Musk, by the way, asked the question, and away you go. That's it. And now we have a news story.
We do. It was Peter Ducey, by the way, from Fox. who asked that question, which I find especially interesting, right?
Which is the parent company of this show.
Which is the parent. Well, it's not Fox News Channel is not the parent company. Fox is the parent company, for the record.
Fox is the parent company of this channel and of Fox News.
Okay, that's correct. Okay, but not the way you said it. Not the way you said it. Okay, so Mark, I apologize because this kind of sidelines you. So
I don't want to get you in trouble, Mark.
What do you want to talk? Do you want to talk about something in particular?
You love Harvey's false protestations of he doesn't want to get me in trouble, and all he does.
I don't. I mean, first of all, I have. You don't think I've been respectful? First of all, I'm a businessman, and if you get in trouble, I lose this podcast, and so do you. So I got a stake in this, buddy.
Are you saying you have a financial interest?
No, I'm saying I hate to admit this, but I love our discussions. So
do I, and I love having our third angry man on here.
I do too.
Three angry men. If you make it three angry men, I would love that.
Joe, we love you. We love you. So God, anytime, come on. I'm really serious. By the way, you got to listen to Joe on this on the Tubi special. He the weekly series. He is just amazing.
I'm sure one of the guys.
It was like me fighting three people. It was like bing, bang, boom, bing, bang, boom. I was like, come on.
But have you heard about the big thing that's going on in social media? 100 people versus the gorilla, and the question is who's going to win? And it's like 100 men against a gorilla, and it's a huge thing online now. And
really,
who you would bet on, a gorilla or 100 men? So
Joe, he's calling you now a gorilla. On top of everything else, he's calling you a gorilla.
I probably have some Neanderthal DNA in me, so that's fine.
Joe, that's a compliment to Joe.
Yes, it is. Joe, thank you. I'll be back soon enough, Joe, to be shoulder to shoulder with you.
Okay, Mark, I feel so bad. You get whatever the final word is. It's yours.
No, I'm going to just thank you, Joe. And by the way, next New York case, you and I are going to challenge 23.1. Got it?
Let's do it. When you and I do a case together, that will be just exciting and fun and
epic.
Very horrifying.
The problem, Mark, is you got to do it while your daughter's on maternity leave.
Exactly. Well, it's coming up. I'm going to take Joe and I are going to give a discount.
Is she pregnant?
Yes. She's my grandbaby mama for number 2 coming up.
How many months is she pregnant?
She did 4 months yesterday, I think.
Holy cow. Did she start the show? Is she showing?
What? She's starting to.
You got to get that in front of the jury. That has to. She should be walking in front of that jury every day with the belly.
It's like the New York juries. Is everybody pregnant in this case? Okay, guys. We'll see you.